effort to overhaul federal election law and disenfranchise voters has run into some legal troubles. A federal judge has blocked part of the president's executive order that mandated potential voters show proof of U.S. citizenship when attempting to register. In her ruling, the judge said, quote, "Our Constitution entrusts Congress and the states, not the president, with the authority to regulate federal elections." Joyce and Lisa are back with us. What did you make of this?
I thought that it was a very good distillation of the constitutional issues here, right? You cannot just simply do by executive order what you feel like and ignore the separation of powers principles that undergird our entire constitutional system. And that's what Judge Kollar-Kotelly is saying in this 120-page opinion.
Had time.
Yes. But she is essentially saying, look, you might think that it's a good idea to require proof of citizenship in order to register to vote, but you can't just do that by presidential fiat because constitutionally, statutorily, election administration is the province of the states and Congress, and you can't just whisk that away from him. And when the White House says they are trying to nullify an election, these judges, well, if somebody campaigned on the premise of, I'd like to execute a bunch of people, and judges said, no, you can't do that because that's unconstitutional, we would all clearly agree with them, right? Because that's clear. But here, the difference is null, right? It's essentially the same thing. What he is saying he was elected to do, to the extent that he has a mandate to do that, is thoroughly unconstitutional. The powers that he thinks he was elected to carry out aren't powers that any president ever had.
But the judge, Joyce, did decline to block other parts of Trump's executive order, including one provision that gives the Department of Homeland Security and DOJ enhanced power to search for alleged non-citizen voters on state voter lists. Another provision that was not blocked penalizes states that allow ballots to be counted after Election Day, so long as they are postmarked by the day of the election. So, to your point, Lisa, about that balance that between what the federal government can do and what the states are constitutionally allowed to do in the province under the province of elections. This judge was kind of walking that line, saying, okay, there's certain things that, yeah, you can do with respect to how ballots are allowed or how ballots are counted, et cetera.
So as an appellate lawyer, I love this decision, right? This is not a case where the judge had a knee-jerk reaction and just said, forget it, I'm tossing the executive order. 120 pages. She goes through, this opinion is just a masterclass in how the branches of government are structured, the authority presidents have over the election machinery, the series of laws that have been passed by Congress that are in legitimate spaces. And so she then reaches this conclusion. There's some of the claims that are brought here, right? This is primarily brought by the League of Women Voters. It's actually 3 consolidated cases. But she says some of these claims are premature. You got to wait until more happens to bring these claims. I'm not going to allow them right now. There are some other issues that get set aside, but the big one here, the requirement that you show your papers in order not just to register, but every time you have to re-register to vote, right? If you're a student and you move, if you're an older person and you're in a nursing home, right, you have to re-register. If you don't have a passport, which costs $130 to get, right? I'm from Alabama. I know a poll tax when I see one. And so that's the part that she disallows for now. This is, of course, early times in this case. This is an injunction that keeps the president from enforcing the executive order, which actually directs an independent election commission to do the dirty work here. So it can't go into effect while this litigation works its way through the courts.
So important note then. So, I guess what I'm hearing is that she didn't weigh in on these other provisions that we noted, like the states about the ballots, but she didn't weigh in and say that it was okay and this was not okay. It's like these are some parts that we didn't touch. We only focus on these parts over here.
Also, it's important to note that a number of states' attorneys general have separately sued over this executive order.
Yeah.
And through that litigation, some of the things that Judge Kollar-Kotelly said she couldn't touch because the organizations that brought suit here didn't really have standing to challenge them, those are going to get fleshed out in this parallel litigation brought by the states.
Act Blue?
I want to talk about Act Blue, but can I just say, I want to pick up on something that you said, which is, I see this all when I visit X periodically to see what it is they're talking about over there. I hear a lot of something that you wove into your answer, which is those who are still a part of Trump's base saying, how is it possible that in these United States, a judge can just overrule something that the democratically elected president has decided? Like, I am not certain that they're not making a legal argument. They're making a political argument, and their political argument is landing. I do want to make sure that we also talk about Act Blue and the fact that you have the Justice Department now going after Act Blue, investigating Act Blue, huge fundraising platform for Democrats. Is this anything other than his trying to hobble the political infrastructure of his opponents?
You know, this is why presidents don't have authority over elections, to the point we've just been discussing, right? Because they could control the levers of power and manipulate elections. Presidents aren't supposed to tell the Justice Department when to start a criminal investigation and who to investigate. And it's very clear that there's far too much of that going on here for any of us to be comfortable with this investigation. The Justice Department, you know, knows how to open a case. They know how to investigate. There is still a public corruption unit at the Justice Department, although, frankly, Pam Bondi has peeled off most of those resources and devoted them to immigration, right? In the case we were discussing earlier, the FBI agent who wrote the affidavit, that was an agent who used to work public corruption, and now he's in a courthouse arresting people on immigration charges. So there is still space, apparently, to do these cases, but only when it's a platform that's used by Democrats. And that's the sort of a case, an investigation that from the get-go really has a real stench to it.
Can I add one thing? If this president were really interested in rooting out foreign corruption in elections, maybe he would have let the Southern District of New York continue with what Judge Dale Ho called a perfectly righteous and valid case against the mayor of New York, Eric Adams.
Well, John Adams said we are government ruled by laws, not men. Time asked the president, did he agree with that? The president said, I wouldn't agree with it 100%. We are a government where men are involved in the process of law, and ideally, you're going to have honest men like me.
Well, we'll choke on that. So.
Joyce Vance, Lisa Rubin, love you both. It's good to have you at this table now.